Hey, what's going on? Luke here. I'm here to do my preview and tips for round 6 of the 2021 NRL season. Now this one I'm expecting a pretty good week of footy. Last week there was a lot of blowouts, but there was also some upsets, so I'm hoping we go into round 6 and we get a few more upsets. In particular, I hope my Bulldogs get a win. Now just before we get into my tips, I just want to take the time to ask if you happen to enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell, follow me on social media, do all that sort of stuff. And now we got that out of the way, let's get into my tips. So the first game of the round sees the Brisbane Broncos hosting the Penrith Panthers. Look, this one straight up, I'm just going to say this is going to be an annihilation. This is going to be an onslaught. The Penrith Panthers have been absolutely fantastic this year, undefeated, and not only are they undefeated, but they've been absolutely destroying teams left, right, and centre. It doesn't matter what team it is you put in front of them, they're going to beat, and in particular, Broncos, they don't stand a chance. Now, the Broncos side that they fielded, I don't mind the side. I think it's a lot better than the ones that they fielded in the past. However, they've dropped Anthony Milford, they've brought in Brady Croft. I don't think that's the answer. I really don't think that's the answer. I know the Broncos are trying to look for something. They're looking for some change. And they talked last week about how they've got to stop playing favourites and stop being nice. And they've got to start dropping people. But I don't know if Anthony Milford's the problem. We saw in round 1, we saw he still has it. We've seen in the past, Anthony Milford is definitely a quality NRL player. And I think he's a lot better than Brody Croft, put it that way. Look, I don't know what you do with the Broncos because I think Milford's the best half, but I don't know what combination you go with because maybe he's the problem in the sense that he's the best player, but he just doesn't work with any of the combos. Maybe Brody Croft and Dearden will work a lot better. But yeah, this side for the Broncos, I don't have a lot of faith in it. And coming up against Panthers, I just can't see it being a good night in the office. Look, Penrith, we know they're good. We know they're quality. We know they're probably going to towel them up. I'm expecting probably 40-50 put on them, to be honest. Although, in saying that though, have Penrith really put... I don't know if they've actually put any scores like that on any teams this year. They said they've been winning well, winning by a 30-odd, but they haven't really put 50 on any teams as far as I can recall. But they have versed some pretty decent sides as well. So coming up against the Broncos, I think it's going to be a complete mismatch, and I think Penrith are going to win 13+. Now moving on to the second game of the round, it's the Newcastle Knights taking on the Cronulla-Sutherland Sharks. Now this one is a very interesting clash, not because of the two teams going up against each other or the form of teams, just because of the whole fact that the Sharks have just sacked their coach for, I don't really know why. I'm going to do a video about it tomorrow. But I don't really understand the whole sacking, and I don't understand what's going to happen with the players. Like, are they going to be up for the game? Are they going to be down for it? Because we've seen Sean Johnson come out and talk about John Morris, and he was very, very supportive. And it seems like all the players are very supportive of him. So I don't understand how chucking a new coach in just last minute. That's what it seems like. Just last minute chucking a new coach for the rest of the season because they've told John Morris he's not wanted, so he's resigned or whatever's happened. I don't even really know what's happened. He's been sacked, but he hasn't been... I don't know. I really don't understand this whole Shark situation. I don't understand what they're doing. But in terms of their actual form going into the game, the form's been quite good. Now, they got very unlucky last week to lose against the Roosters. I mean, they had the game all but wrapped up, pretty much all but wrapped up. And obviously it took a Sam Walker masterclass. Second 2 games in, he's doing a masterclass. But it took Sam Walker taking over the game and just pretty much destroying the Sharks in 10 minutes, and that was it. But apart from that, like, the Sharks have been pretty good this season. They've been pretty solid, pretty consistent, haven't always won the game, but they've always been in amongst the game. And if they haven't won, they've been very, very close to winning it. Whereas the Knights, they've won a couple of games, but they've been looking pretty bad. Like last week against the Titans, absolutely shocking. Now, Callum Ponga, another game back for him. He didn't look terrible last week, but he definitely did look rusty, despite scoring a try, and I think he also set up a try too. But look, he will definitely be a lot better this week, I'd have to say. But I don't know about the Knights. I keep looking at the Knights side and thinking that they should be a lot better than what they are. But in saying that though, if there was ever a week for them to get a win, it'd be in front of the home crowd. They've got a fairly decent side. The halves have got a week under their belt in terms of Blake Green and Connor Watson. Look, Caleb Ponga another week back. I'm going to go for an upset here. I think it's an upset. I'm going to go for a Knights victory. I feel like every week I pick the Knights and they end up losing. But this one, I'm going to go Knights. I'm going to go 1-12. I feel like all the disruptions in the Sharks camp, I think it's going to be too much for them. And that's pretty much why I'm tipping them. Not because I think the Sharks are a bad side or are in worse form or anything. Just pretty much because of the off-field stuff. I'm just going to go with the Knights. Now into the second game of Friday night. It's the Melbourne Storm hosting the Sydney Roosters. This is a very, very juicy clash. Now, if you looked at this clash a couple of years ago, you would have seen all the big names. You would have seen your Cooper Cronk, your Cameron Smith, Billy Slayers, all that. Not so much these days. Now, the Storm, they definitely have a lot of stars on their side. The Roosters themselves have a lot of stars on their side. However, it's sort of the unknowns who are really doing it for them. You got your Drew Hutchisons, you got your Sam Walkers. They're leading the Roosters around, and they're actually on a bit of a winning streak. Ever since that Rabbitohs lost, they've actually gone from strength to strength. And it's crazy for me to sit here after doing a video where I pretty much wrote off the Roosters, and we have them now playing pretty well. Now, I will say that the competition that they've been playing is definitely not Melbourne Storm level, but at the same time, the Storm have been very hot and cold hold as well. And I haven't actually seen a game where the Storm have played the whole 80 minutes. Even last week against the Bulldogs, there were times where the Bulldogs were on top of the Storm. And I know the scoreline doesn't reflect that, but I was there at the game. And there was times where you could get it, you could feel it. The Storm made a lot of errors, which is uncharacteristic for him, but it is sort of getting a little bit more characteristic for him in 2021 because there's no Cameron Smith there, and they definitely don't feel like the same side. However, Harry Grant, he's back, and apparently Brendan Smith was a bit ill last week as well. So they definitely weren't at full strength, I would say, last week. And I will say their right side is definitely a problem. Like the whole Remus Smith, I think George Jennings, Robert Jennings, whichever Jennings it is, definitely a weak spot in that side. So if teams can exploit that, which I think the Roosters will be able to do, there's definitely points available in that side. But in terms of who's going to get the win here, I think your safe money's on the Storm. I mean, they just got too many big guns in that side. You have Pappenhausen, Jerome Hughes, Cameron Munster. They've got guys who will step up on the occasion, and especially being a home game as well. I just can't see the Roosters doing it again. They got quite lucky. They got quite fortunate that Sam Walker was able to step up. But if there's ever a coach who's going to be able to just make a game plan that's perfect to target Sam Walker, it'll be Craig Bellamy. And we've seen his defense isn't the best as well, so I would expect the Storm to exploit that big time. So for this one, I'm going to be going the Storm. I'm actually going to go 13 plus. I think in the end, it will end up being a blowout. I think it'll be close for a large part of the game, but I think the Storm will run away with it. Now moving on to Saturday night, it's a Manly Warringah Seagulls taking on the Gold Coast Titans. This is going to be a very, very good clash because we have Tom Trbojevic returning for Manly, which also means we're going to see a new Manly. Every time Tom Trbojevic plays for Manly, they go from being a bottom 4 side to all of a sudden being a top 8 sort of side. So I'm expecting a good clash for them, especially considering the form the Titans are in. Look, the Titans, when they take on some of the real top teams, they don't really do too well. But when they take on teams like the Knights, like they did last week, they put an absolute hiding on them. So with Manly, look, Tom Trbojevic, it's his first game back. We don't really know where they're going to stand because we haven't actually seen them play with Tommy Turbo for quite a while. But like we've seen in the past, they actually are a pretty good side when he plays. So I'd expect it to be a pretty good clash. However, look, it is his first game back, so we don't want to expect too much from him. And they did get the win last week, but it was only against the Warriors. And the Warriors, at the moment, they're as injury troubled as anybody. They've got a lot of key injuries to a lot of key players. Fanua Blake being the biggest one. So coming up against them, I mean, they actually blew a couple tries too. So it wasn't like Manly outplayed them. It took a field goal in the last second for them to get the win. So it wasn't exactly a convincing win, but it was a win nonetheless. Gets them off the bottom of the table, and I suppose that's going to satisfy the Manly fans. But looking at their lineups, the Manly side does look better than it has done this whole season, I would say. Dylan Walker not there. Tom Trbojevic comes in. An obvious upgrade. I mean, I don't really need to talk about it any further. We all know Tom Trbojevic quality. It's just a matter of whether he's actually going to be able to get through the game and if he's going to be underdone, because he's going to be first game back. So fitness is definitely going to be an issue. But look, the Titans, I think they're easy money here. They're smart money, I should say. Look, they're in great form at the moment. They've got a lot of guys who can just single-handedly get the job done. Looking at Dave Fafita, Big Tino, even you guys like Tyrone Peachey have been pretty good this season. So they've got a lot of guys who can strike out of nowhere. We saw Dave Fafita score from a literal, just a tap, ran 10 metres and scored. So look, they definitely can produce the tries. We also saw them score from the kickoff, which is pretty cool to see. So look, if Titans are on, if they play at least like a 7 out of 10, I think they should put Manly away. They should put them away pretty easy. But Tom Trbojevic, he can add anything to this Manly side. So we don't really know what they're going to offer. But at this point, for my tip, I'm going to go Titans. I'm going to go them 13 plus. Now, into the second game of Saturday, we have the South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the West Tigers. This is actually going to be a pretty interesting one. I keep saying that, but this is an interesting one because we see Benji Marshall take on his former club. Cody Walker returns to the side just for 1 week out. I don't know how he only got 1 week. Benji Marshall returns to the bench. And I think for the Rabbitohs, I think the bench is actually the best spot for Benji. I think he's brilliant. Just coming off the bench, exposing the tired forwards with how fast-paced the game is at the moment. Him coming on and just his speed, his footwork, I think it's going to actually tear teams to shreds. And I think the Tigers definitely going to be in trouble when he comes on. The Tigers themselves, obviously, absolutely abysmal last week. But we've seen teams who have games like they did last week and they usually come out the next week and play half decent. But in saying that, though, I don't see it happening for the Tigers. Their team isn't really different from last week. And look, they got beat by the Cowboys. I think that really says it all. A team that struggles big time away from home. Then you add in all the circumstances around the game in terms of the Tommy Rodonigas stuff and the fact that they're actually playing at Leichhardt. Leichhardt's usually the game where the Tigers get up for, and they definitely weren't up for that game. So, look, if they can't get the job done against the Cowboys, how are they going to fare against the Rabbitohs? The Rabbitohs should actually put like 50 or 60 on them. This game could be anything. The Rabbitohs could put 70 on them. Who really knows what's going to happen? But I think the Rabbitohs are going to get this one done quite comfortably. Their side side is just too good. From 1 to 13, even 1 to 17, their side is just super strong, and the Tigers aren't. So Rabbitohs 13+. Now we move on to the last game of Super Saturday. It's the Canberra Raiders taking on the Parramatta Eels. Very disappointing rounds last week for both of these sides. Now, in my opinion, the Raiders had a much harder game. They took on Penrith. Penrith are literally the form team of the comp, the best team in the comp, in my opinion, at the moment. You add in the fact that they lost their fullback, they lost Chance. He went down. I don't know how long he's going to be out for, but they got Caleb Aikens in, who actually came from Penrith last year, and he was actually quite decent. At times, I thought he would maybe end up being the number 1 for Penrith, but Dylan Edwards ended up winning it. But Caleb Aikens, I think he's actually a pretty good backup for him. Definitely better than shifting Rapana to fullback and shuffling around the rest of the back line. Look, Rapana, he's just not a fullback. I know when he first came into first grade with the Raiders, I think he played a little bit of fullback, and I remember him being pretty good, but all these years on the wing, he's not quite as quick as he was. Definitely don't want to put him at fullback. But the rest of the side, as far as I can tell, is pretty full strength. And for Parramatta, with how they played last week, I think this is definitely danger signs. We've seen the Eels be flat track bullies, and we've seen them absolutely pile on the points against these shit sides. But then when they come up against these tough sides, they really struggle. Now, last week, they really struggled against the Dragons. They got absolutely decimated by them. And I wouldn't really say the Dragons are a super tough side despite where they are on the ladder at the moment. But you look at that side and they shouldn't be doing as well as they are, the Dragons. But Parramatta, I was definitely expecting them to come out and give the Dragons a reality check. Instead, it was kind of the opposite. The Dragons gave the Eels a reality check. For the whole season so far, I've been looking at the Eels and I've been going, yeah, I think they're the real deal this year. I think they'll be up there. Maybe they're going to win a premiership. Probably not, but maybe. Whereas the Dragons came out and they just gave them an absolute belting, gave them a hiding. And now I'm looking at the Eels side, I'm like, yeah, this is literally the same Eels as they've been the last couple of years. So I think for the Eels going into this game, I think this is literally a must-win game. I think they need to hit back after last week. The only problem is I don't think they're going to. I think going to Canberra, I think it's going to be too much of an ask for them. I think the Raiders are going to be annoyed after losing last week as well. And I think the Raiders will hit back and I think they'll win this one. I think it'll be a tight one because I think both of the sides pretty evenly matched in terms of the forwards and the backs and all that sort of stuff. But I just think the Raiders, I think they'll just have a little bit too much. I think Jack White will be able to get them home. I think it's going to be a win for the Raiders 1-12. Now moving on to Sunday afternoon football. It's the St. George Illawarra Dragons taking on the New Zealand Warriors. Both of these sides have been quite surprising in 2021. Obviously the Warriors started off pretty well, whereas the Dragons, they didn't start off great. I mean, you look at their trial form's terrible. I think the first round they weren't that great, lost to the Sharks, but after that, they've been absolutely flying, the Dragons, whereas the Warriors, they've sort of started to go downhill. A lot more injuries have been hitting them. Fanua Blake's not there. Chanel Harris-Tavita's not there. They still have Roach Tuivasa-Sheck though, so as long as he's in the side, I definitely give him a chance, but this Dragon side at the moment, they're absolutely flying, and realistically, they should be winning this game. Probably one of the first games I've seen them go into a game, and I'm 100% convinced that they're going to win this one. Every other time, like Parramatta last week, I kept looking at that game, and I was like, yeah, Dragon's been pretty good, but this is the week it falls off. Now this one, I think they're going to this game, I think they're favourites, and I think they'll go on with it. I think they've got way too strong of a side at this point. And all the players who in the past have been those guys who have the potential to rise up and play good or can put it together for a couple of weeks and they drop off. They're doing it consistently this year. Corey Norman's is a big one. They're actually playing quite decently. And I don't know whether that's down to the coaching. I don't know whether it's down to the fact that they just weren't playing for Paul McGregor last year. Or I don't really know what the changes are. But the Dragons, they're just definitely putting in a lot more on defense. Their defense is very, very sound. Less errors, just more commitment. And it's definitely working for them. So I can see them winning this one very, very easy in my opinion. I think they're going to win this one 13+. I can see them piling on the points. Zach Lomax, I expect him to score a try too. Ravalawa, I expect him to score a try. Put it this way, if they can beat the Eels, they can definitely beat the Warriors. And I think it's going to be a tough night for the Warriors, or a tough afternoon, I should say. I just think all you have to do is look at the lineups, and you can see that Tohu Harris is playing number 10. He's playing prop. So I think that's when you know the Warriors are in a bad state. So yeah, Dragons 13+. Now moving on to the last game of the round, the most important game of the round in my opinion, the North Queensland Cowboys taking on my Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. Now this might be the week that the Bulldogs break the drought. Cowboys did it last week. I wasn't expecting that. I definitely thought the Tigers would get the job done. Obviously, it didn't happen. The Cowboys came out and they just absolutely blindsided them in front of their home fans. The Cowboys, that's one of the better games I've seen them play, not just this year, but in a long, long time. And Jason Tamalalo didn't even play. Josh Maguire's just been released to the Dragons as well. So I suppose for the Cowboys, it's going to be a big confidence builder. Also adding to the fact that they didn't have to rely on Jason Tamalalo for a win. So I think that's a good sign for them. And Todd Payton, look, we've got two new coaches coming into these sides. Both haven't really got the results. So I think this is going to be an important game in terms of getting the pressure off the back of the coaches. But for the Bulldogs, I did see some really positive signs. I thought Luke Thompson was fantastic last week. I thought the Bulldogs in general looked good at times against the Storm. And that's the reigning premiers. I mean, the Cowboys looked pretty good against a shitty West Tigers. But the Bulldogs actually looked alright against the Melbourne Storm side, despite them having no wins and everything going against them pretty much. But they scored a couple of tries last week. The attack was definitely there. The defense wasn't, but that's something they need to work on. And obviously coming up against the Storm, is a way bigger ask than coming up against the Cowboys, but it is a home game for the Cowboys, so expect them to be good. Jason Tabulau is back as well, and he's slotting straight into that number 13 position. Also for the Bulldogs, Luke Thompson going into the starting lineup after being named to start at prop last week and then coming off the bench. He's been named to start at 13, so whether that happens, I don't really know, but you got Thompson up against Tabulau, two big international superstars here. I think it's going to be a good clash, and hopefully the Bulldogs get the victory. I don't really have too much confidence in saying that because I can quite easily see the Cowboys winning this one and winning it well, and I typically think the Bulldogs struggle against the Cowboys. But look, I'm just hoping that the Cowboys last week, I'm just hoping that was a bit of a luck because the Tigers were just pretty bad and there was a lot of lucky tries. So I'm thinking that's more of the case than them actually being really good, and I'm hoping the Bulldogs can get up for it because this is actually a winnable game and they'll be looking at it and going, yes, we can actually win this one, and they'll actually have a little bit of self-belief. So I'm hoping they win this one. I'm going to go 1-12. I think it's going to be a tight one regardless of who wins, but I'm going to go Bulldogs. There's a lot of bias to this one, but I'm going with the Bulldogs 1-12. Rightio, so those are my tips. Leave in the comment section below. What are your tips for round 6 of the 2021 NRL season? Do you think mine are good? Do you think mine are bad? Are there any that are just completely wrong? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, while you're leaving the comments, or if you're not leaving a comment, go ahead and give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Follow me on Twitter. It's on the screen at the moment, and just follow me on social media in general. My Facebook's Mr. Luke, but everything else is just Mr. Luke on my team. So give me a follow, give me an ad, do all that sort of stuff. Leave a like, subscribe, do all that stuff as well. But that's where I'm going to end this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See yous.